Why is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Apparently, Zoom has a new feature
Okay.
because I was going to delete our conversation yesterday, and then I saw there's a little like red flag on it, like, hey, check this out. You haven't looked at this yet? AI Zoom has created a meeting summary with AI Companion. I'll start with I'm going to have to edit some of this because there are things that we don't want put in the show.
Oh,
However, quick recap. Luke and Heidi discussed their busy schedules, Heidi's professional record company, and their mutual love for various films from the 90s. They also engaged in a nostalgic conversation about their interactions with various individuals, plans for a project, and their admiration for musicians and music films. The
wow.
the conversation meandered through various topics,
Meandered.
including, so there's that, which is great. And then we keep going.
I love that it also cut you out of the professional record company because I did say our. I remember
Yes.
saying our professional
Um,
record company.
so I introduced a dog sledding champion from Northern Maine, and Heidi expressed her interest in learning more about him.
Did I?
Yes. Um, and then apparently, according to AI, so
Did it say I was really annoying?
no, it's
Oh,
amazing. Um, Apparently, they think I'm adopting someone.
you are.
He and Heidi discussed the next steps in his adoption process. That sounds like I'm being adopted. I don't know. Which involves filling out paperwork and background checks. They also reminisce about their mutual love for the film Mobsters, with Luke impressively guessing the film title Heidi was referring to.
Oh,
Even AI gets it. And
they
then on the
do.
next heading, nostalgic film discussion from the 90s. They discuss the merits of Cost of Living, Mulholland Falls, She's All That, and Bad Girls.
Cost of living.
I
Okay, I
don't know
think
what the,
remember when you posed that question to me about a month ago about AI and our
oh
podcast
yeah,
and all
uh-huh.
of that? Yeah, this should answer your question right
This
here.
really does. But
Yeah.
here's my favorite point. Because this phrase comes up a couple times. And getting, I'll just come in mid-sentence, getting sidetracked by joking about potential cover band names and themes. No decisions or next steps are clearly established regarding the actual interview. Uh, and then
Wait, okay, that is the most accurate thing that it taught us, but I love that it said we meandered. Like we don't, we
so
divert, we sidetrack, we get completely distracted, go down rabbit holes. But meander, I don't feel is what we do.
let me give you the final section of this is 4 pages, by the way. I cut and pasted it into Word. Um, so this is way, way, way down after our musical biopics and concerts discussion.
Okay.
While critiquing Bohemian Rhapsody, that you praised Robbie Williams and take that. Um,
Oh,
so
not in Bohemian Rhapsody.
no. They discuss having another call with someone named the quote rubbing mud guy at 1:30 p.m., but the details are uncertain. The conversation meanders without any clear decisions or action items. AI generated content may be inaccurate or misleading. Always check for accuracy.
Uh, I mean,
I am ready for this to just, we should cut and paste this. And this is our Apple, iTunes, Spotify review.
this is it right
Meandering
here.
without any real decisions made on anything.
That should just be what, I mean, that should just be our description of who we are for everything.
Pretty much, yes.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
Tell me about this mud.
How do you start?
How do you start? How do we start with mud?
Uh, it's a let's see, where do you start? Major League Baseball started using mud in the 1930s, trying to take the slippery coating off of brand new baseballs. And Lena Blackburne, who the mud is named after, he was a coach for the Philadelphia Athletics at the time, a third base coach, I think he was. He found this mud that he grew up fishing and swimming in this place, and he knew the mud around there was something that he wanted to try. He collected some mud, played with it a little bit, took it into the umpires and said, "Here, you want to try this?" And they tried it, and it's been part of baseball ever since. I think 1938 was the first year that all the teams were using it, all the American Association teams were using it. Yeah, it's been in 1938-39 season, the American Association started using mud. They liked it so much that all the teams were using it. It wasn't until 1950 that the National League started using it. And that was because the rivalry between the American Association and the National League was bitter. It was bitter. I mean, fist fight type of bitter over games. And when Lena Blackburne discovered the mud, he used it for the American Association and wouldn't sell it to the National League.
Of course not.
In
I wouldn't
19,
either.
in the 1950, I think in 1950, Lena was a scout for the Phillies, the Philadelphia Phillies. And at that point, he shared it with the National League. And this is before MLB existed. This was American Association. I think it was National League is what it was called, but it was two separate entities. You know, he switched over to National League, and that's when he finally allowed the National League to use it. But since 1950, it's been in all Major League Baseball.
Now, in the 20s and 30s, early on in professional baseball, you were allowed to do anything you wanted to the ball. Tobacco
Yes.
juice, you could sandpaper the ball, you could do anything. And this was when they
Yes.
had a rule where one ball, one game, even if you're hitting a ball of yarn around by the ninth inning. Do you know how mud became an acceptable thing to put on the ball that wasn't considered doctoring it?
Well, it's precisely because when the dead ball era ended, they needed something to make the ball more grippable so the pitchers could grip it. And they tried the tobacco juice, they tried shoe polish, they tried just dirt from the infield, but the tobacco juice would get the ball too wet. The shoe polish discolored it too much. And the sand from the infield scraped up the leather. So it was like giving the pitcher a nail file. Lena found this mud, and working with the umpires in Philly, they at the athletics clubhouse, they found that this did what they needed, and it didn't damage the leather, it didn't discolor the leather more than just an off white, and it didn't gum up and mess up the laces on the ball. So they were happy with what they had, and the rest is history.
Your company started supplying mud, you said, to I guess it'd be the Athletics before the Phillies. Is that correct? Or Phillies
Yeah.
at the
Yeah, it would have been the Athletics first, and then the rest of the American Association. And then in the 1950s, all the National League was using it.
Now, the novice might say, you've seen one pile of mud, you've seen them all. But what is it about this mud you collected somewhere along the banks of the Delaware? I feel like there's this, it's sort of like McDonald's with the secret sauce. Nobody knows what's in it. Everyone has an idea, but there's something special about what
Right.
you guys have. What is it about this mud that is different?
Well, it's the geography and the geology of the area. The mud that I collect, it's not off the Delaware River. It's a tributary of the Delaware, so
Oh,
it's a
okay.
few miles. It's a few miles off of the Delaware River. But it's the minerals in the mud in that area are super fine abrasive. So it's kind of like if you put it under a magnifying glass, it looks like well, under high power microscope, actually, it looks like uh, shards of glass, little crystals that look like broken glass. That's I think it's in the feldspar family, and it's prevalent in the soil where I get the mud. The mud will only settle at a certain configuration of the creek that it's in. So it's got to be it's got to be on a bend, and it's on the slow side of the bend where the water has time to settle, because it's mostly organic matter that settles out, and then some of the soil, the feldspar in the soil, they come together and they make it the perfect combination. And so it's got a lot to do with the area, or the way the creek runs through this certain area.
And I'm assuming that makes it, there's only certain times when you can, I guess the word would be harvest, because the mud hasn't had,
It's
are
harvest,
you,
yeah.
I feel like in my mind, it is you and sort of some young, overly excited assistant being like, let's get the mud. And you're patient, young buck. We will, when it's ready. Uh, is it like that? Are you kind of constantly observing this spot in the river or this
Well,
tributary saying, not yet, tomorrow we'll get it?
well, when my parents were doing it, we took it over from my grandfather in 1965. My grandfather was friends with Lena, and they used to do it together when they were younger. Um, when they got too old to do it, they turned it over to my parents. And when my father was doing it, we did it. We would only harvest in late September and October, because he always said that's the best time to get it. And it is the best quality mud and the easiest to harvest. I found over the years, because I have to get it more often than I used to, I found that I can get it any time of year, but there could be, it's got to be a 2-week window in between harvests. I got mud December 30th this year, which is the latest I've ever done it in a season. But I could go back today and it would be back. It would have replenished itself. It's just a constant cycle where it's coming. It goes with the tide. It goes with the high, low tide. It doesn't have to be certain weather. It's better in the warm weather for some reason. I'm not sure why. It may be because the ground gets stiffer in the cold weather, and it's not as easy to collect. It's a year-round thing. I can go year-round. It's just a matter of how much setting time there has to be in between trips.
And do you have to make sure, since this is proprietary, that nobody's following you and nobody's watching where you're going to try to figure out where the mud is?
I get that question all the time, and
I know, it's fast.
I always thought for we can't have people follow us because they'll steal the mud. That's not really the case. I mean, they I guess theoretically they could, but the name is what makes this the real mud.
Yeah,
I mean, you couldn't go out there and dig up mud and say Joe's mud.
right.
But the real reason we don't have I don't like people knowing where it's at is more, and I didn't realize this is probably why my father didn't do it. Didn't let people know where it was at. I worry about the area getting overrun with curiosity.
That's more what I was thinking,
That'll
like
Paparazzi.
destroy the area.
the tourists and the
Yeah, that'll destroy the area more than anything else
Right.
with traffic.
Foot
And
traffic and
yeah, because where I'm at, there's a few people that go back there once in a while, go back to fish, or kids will go back to swim, but not even very often anymore. That's even died down. But I always worry about the curiosity seekers and the super baseball fans, and especially the Yankees fans.
Tell
can't
me
be
Not
about it.
trusted
trusted.
the Yankees
Right. You can't trust the
fans.
Yankees fans
But
ever.
yeah, that's the real reason we keep it secret.
And how much mud are we talking about here when you say you do a harvest? Because you're supplying an
Well,
obscene amount of mud to teams.
yeah. All right. When I do a harvest, I take a 5 gallon bucket of paint would
Hmm.
look like. I take 5 gallon buckets and I take 20 of them. Now they each hold, well, they weigh about 50 pounds when we bring them out, but they hold about, I guess, 30 pounds each of finished processed mud. It would work out to about 30 pounds each. So 30, 20, it's 600 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
It's a good workout.
And that's 600 pounds in a trip. And I'll do sometimes 2 trips a month. So it's a good amount of mud yearly.
And do you ship it out in those containers? How much do you send out to a team?
No, I send out, each team gets, for baseball, each team gets 2 containers, 2 3-pound containers for spring training. And then they each get 2 more containers sent to their home park. So it's 60 containers in the spring, and then 60 containers right before opening day.
Oh,
But that's for Major League Baseball. Now I have football teams buying it now too, and they'll buy 10 or 15 containers for their season because they use more on each football. But for baseball, they get about 12 pounds for each team per season.
Is there any statute in baseball or in NFL rules that they can only use so much mud, or are some teams ordering more? And who is the team that just has no idea how to do this and they're just
Well,
taking an
they
obscene
order
amount of
more.
mud?
I find that teams are ordering more in baseball because they send it down to their farm teams. They
Mm.
send it extra to the minor leagues, or a lot of them will send it to Dominican or South America or
mhm.
Mexico to where they train their pitchers. For instance, the Houston Astros. I just sent out last week. I just sent out 5 containers for them, but the Astros aren't going to see it. It's going to go to their farm system and overseas to train pitchers. They'll still get their regular 2 for spring training and 2 for their home park, but they're getting 5 for their farm system.
Is there any team that's ever just tried to not use it? Is there anyone who's ever said, we're going to just stop for a while?
And then come crawling back.
Right, exactly. That's obviously the follow-up.
No, actually, it's in the rule book. It's a rule that they have to use it.
That's
Really?
amazing.
For the majors, yeah. For baseball, yes. NFL doesn't have a rule, but the NFL says each team has to prepare their balls for the game. It doesn't say how they have to prepare. Yeah, it's in the rule book. They have to use it.
That's amazing.
MLB has been trying to devise a way to work around it. For some reason, a couple $1,000s worth of mud is too much for them to deal with. They want to, what they want to do, they're trying to get consistency, precise consistency in the baseball. If you know anything about baseballs, even the stitches aren't consistent
Right.
completely. They tried it with the Arizona Fall League a few years ago, using a different cover on the ball that didn't need mud, but it didn't work. They ended up. I spoke to some of well, a couple of the managers, the equipment managers, and they said that they're not supposed to be using the mud, but the pitchers feel these balls that they have, and they're not happy with them, and they're using the mud anyway. So I don't see the mud being replaced, and I know teams call me at ungodly hours telling me I need mud, I need it overnight, and we're pretty much set with baseball.
Oh, and I feel like players, especially in baseball, are an incredibly superstitious
Yes.
bunch. And so
Yes,
the thought
they
of
are.
getting mud
don't
from
take
anywhere
away,
else
right.
or not doing it has got to just make some of these pitchers wake up in a cold sweat. That
Yeah,
just they're
yeah, they are.
"Mm-mm,
It
we're not
is.
messing with that."
It is
Right.
a tradition that a lot of them can't do without,
Oh, you
and
can't.
some of them don't even know what it is exactly about the ball, what's being done to the ball. They just know that this ball feels right, this one doesn't. I mean, the stuff works, and they're proof. I mean, it's been 80,
Yeah.
85 years, 85 years.
What is it like knowing that you are part of this really American tradition
Like,
that starting in the 50s, in that era that so many people idolize and remember so fondly, to all these other insanely famous moments in baseball, that your family has a hand in all of this?
It's humbling. It's humbling, and it's something I think about pretty much every harvest that I go out. I think this is something that is important to the sport, and it's something that's in the Hall of Fame and its history, and that it can be pretty humbling at times. But it's a neat feeling to know that when I see that game-winning home run go over the fence, some of my DNA is probably on it, which is
yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
to that point, there's more stuff in the Hall of Fame that you have been involved with probably than any other human being.
I mean, truly.
probably. Yeah.
I mean,
All, all those special baseballs have my mud on them.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
And
really big deal. Like that's
It's
like we're
pretty cool
very,
feeling. It's a pretty cool feeling. I,
very
I
cool feeling.
I wish I had known more and been more mindful when I was growing up and taken advantage of that. But
this might be a stupid question. Are you a baseball fan?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I love
It's not,
watching baseball. I
it's like,
love.
nah,
I don't
basketball's my
think
scene.
I don't think I missed a Phillies game this year. I think I saw every Phillies game broadcast. Pretty
So,
close. I might have missed one or two.
That's
and so obviously you can't play favorites with teams when you're sending out this stuff. And I'm
Right.
assuming when you harvest it, you have no idea what's going where. Does
Right.
anyone, again, get sort of superstitious or a little bit lippy about, oh, you're sending the Yankees the good stuff and
Yeah,
you're screwing
yeah. Oh,
Boston?
for
I get
sure.
that. When somebody loses, though, one of my friends will say, "So you sent them the crappy mud?
Right.
It's all the same mud. It's all the
Yeah.
same." I like to joke about the Phillies getting the best mud, but there's no way of telling who gets what.
And does baseball, do they inspect it? Because again, the attention to detail that they pay with everything, the various ways they can prove a ball was that ball that was hit out of the park by a certain play, or that was the one that was the final out in an important game. Do they trust that you are as part of this process and have been part of this process for so long that you know what they are expecting in their mud and that you're not doing anything that would compromise the integrity of the game or any of these balls?
Yeah, the only issue we ever have is if it's during a drought season, the mud will tend to get a little sandy, and there'll be the bigger grains of sand in it, and they'll call me about that, say, hey, this mud isn't as fine as it normally is. No, that they know that I'm giving them all the same mud. You know, I think they would like to be able to do away with it altogether, but they haven't found a way to do that.
The yearly cycle of just the ebb and flow of any body of water, the the tides and the pools, and you said the bend that goes into all of it, has either conservation or pollution, does that affect the mud at all? Since it's a tributary, is it by the time it gets there, it's pretty being cleaned, or does any of that water affect what comes out of the ground?
Not really. I've never seen a big problem with any kind of pollution or anything. There there was one season where I went to all this trouble, collected 500-600 pounds of mud, brought it home, and after it settled for a few days, it got a stench to it.
Oh,
I
no.
couldn't figure out what it was. I went back to the site and I found there was a dead fish
Oh, no.
high up on the bank. So the water was going up and it was swirling around this dead fish. And when it ran out, the fish oils and the smell got in the mud. I couldn't tell until it had settled for a little bit.
Of
I
course.
dumped out 500 pounds of mud that day.
Oh,
That's the only time I've ever had trouble. Normally, so the tide comes in and it goes in to the pine barrens is like a cedar water or brackish water, and it runs out. I think that filters out a lot of anything that would come in from the Delaware. Um, but pollution hasn't been a problem, other than maybe some bottles, broken bottles in the area, or some junk. But there's nothing that would harm the mud.
see, that shows what a good person you are, because that's when it would have been really tempting to send that mud to the teams you didn't like. Like, that's when you really want to hold on to your nemesis.
We've had one real complaint from Major League Baseball. It was when my father was still doing the mud. And it's funny. Ernie Tyler, who was the lifetime, I think the longest equipment manager in Major League Baseball for Baltimore Orioles, he got some mud and he called my father in a panic and he said, Burns, this mud smells like shit.
No.
And those were his exact words.
Right.
And my father said, well, nobody else has any problem with it. Everybody's, been happy with it. He said, no, it really smells like shit. I need more mud. So I sent him new mud. Come to find out, somebody played a prank on Ernie Tyler. And he
Oh, no.
literally had a jar of shit. And he thought it was the mud.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's like locker room baseball.
Oh, completely.
And
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the only complaint we've ever had. That was
Oh my
it was a
God.
Not
prank
even your fault.
that caused
Yeah.
Right. Like, nope, not it. That's
So
hilarious.
is your family's mud in the Hall of Fame? Is there a display of it? Do they have their own tub?
It's been, yeah, it was accepted into the Hall of Fame in 1969. I was 15 years old in 69, and we went up for the induction ceremony. My mother brought an extra can of mud and gave it to them, and it was on display. It's been on display a few times. They change their displays every year. They move
Right.
things in and out all the time. It was on display in the section that it's called the evolution of the baseball itself, and it has the old balls, the yarn balls of yarn after a game kind of thing, and it has the different stages of the baseball development, and it was part of that exhibit. It was up. I went to see it when it was up, and they had our can of mud still there, and this was probably 20 years later. This was in the 80s, so they did have it. So it's down there. It will come out sometime. They'll put it up when they decide to do a display change. But yeah, we're in the Hall of Fame.
In your interactions with all these teams throughout the years, with all of the equipment managers and I'm assuming grounds crew and everyone else involved with this, do you ever hear from the players or talk with the players?
I haven't had, uh, I don't have a lot of interaction with players. Um, I have like going to the Hall of Fame and going to being invited to certain games, like in the minor leagues, getting invited out to stadiums to do stuff. Um, the players will say, "We love your mug." You know, uh, um, I don't know what they could do besides this that would work, but I don't have a lot of interaction with players. Most of it's the equipment managers. Like I said, the Hall of Fame. I went there for a couple different times. I went there, but when I talk to those ball players, they're like they're excited to meet the mud guy,
Yeah.
which I find hilarious. I'm a mud farmer.
For more information on Lena Blackburne baseball rubbing mud, used by every major and minor league baseball organization for nearly 75 years, except no substitutes, check out their website, baseballrubbingmud.com.
Why the Podcast is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts because we're shallow and need constant validation. For more information, you can check out our website, whythepodcast.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hedquist and myself from our world headquarters located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?